Good morning, everyone at home. I hope you've had a good rest and you're ready for day 2 of the Liverpool Regional 2023. I'm here, Mike, myself, and Marco, yourself. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm still myself. I did not lose my consciousness tonight. I'm still myself, and I'm here to speak to you about the Pokemon trading card game, this wonderful game that we're here commentating. So I had a look throughout the various decks that have made it into day 2. There's a lot of players that have made it. Let's see exactly how many. There have been 79 players that are still in the competition to make top 8 and try to claim the title.
I think there's just a little personal shout out to my local community. I think there's 5 people from my local community down in London who've made it through, and not everyone's here to play. So we've done pretty well. Our boy, our star player Kai Wainwright didn't even make. I mean, enough about my community. It's not just about the people who are from the UK here, but there's people all around the world, even people from outside of the European region who've come here to Liverpool to compete as well.
Who already made day 2, playing a very interesting Reggie list. We have featured him already on live. He had a very unfortunate matchup and lost, but however he still made it into day 2, and there's still a number of players that we'll be featuring throughout today. There will be 5 rounds followed by top 8. Right now we're getting right into round 10. We have Razwolp against Ryan Morehouse. Would you like to introduce us to the matchup?
Well, I mean, I think it's really exciting to talk about the 2 players. Ryan, one of the top 10 players in the UK right now. I think he's actually 11th, but he's there or thereabouts in the top of the UK scene. So on local soil, able to do so well. But Razwolp on the other side, Israeli player, and has had great success across European regionals in the past and at some internationals. Lots of top 8s, top 32s, and most notably at Bochum in 2020, getting a top 8 there with Mew VMAX. But here,
Mewtwo and Mew.
Mewtwo and Mew. Oh
yeah,
yes,
indeed.
of course.
Mew GX,
That's
great
my
deck.
favourite deck. My favourite deck from back in the day. But yeah, is very much like looking at the history, very much looking to play some of the best decks in format, and played Giratina in the last meta.
Indeed.
Now looking to play Lugia V-Star, which obviously is the deck we've all been talking about as one of the strongest decks in the format right now.
Exactly. In fact, the matchup we're going to feature is Lugia V-Star against Mew VMAX. Now, this matchup is very interesting. We're going to take a look at the list very soon. But in the meantime, as a general point, Lugia V-Star is like, once again, a very raw power right at the beginning. But so Mew VMAX. Mew VMAX can dish out so much damage just on turn 2, and the real power Mew VMAX takes from connecting all these cards in its hand, one after the other, and always having that card advantage to its side.
Well, so we see them prepping up here. First game of the day. We will be having 5 more rounds of Swiss here in day 2. As mentioned, 79 players made it through, getting 19 points or more in day 1 in those 9 rounds of Swiss that we featured yesterday. And then the top 8 players that we find out of this 14-round Swiss, yes, that's right, 14 rounds of Swiss, will be making a chance to get that number 1 spot in top 8. Both these players in a strong spot right now. Typically the players who are around that 7 wins from day 1 do quite well, because they only have to get sort of 3, maybe 4 wins. So that they're in a strong spot in that sense. But anyone here in day 2 has the potential to make it. We often see people who sneak in with the 19 points into day 2 make it all the way to the top 8.
Exactly. So to get into top 8, generally need between 33 or 34 points. That's the minimum. To be granted, you need a bit more than that. But it can all just depend on how many ties there's been throughout the round, how many people have won, and just have a clean record. So right now we see Raz setting up as well as Ryan. There's the fist bump, and we're off. Start with Stoutland, not the best start against Mew VMAX, and a Genesect set for Ryan. So pretty standard stuff there.
Yeah, so game 1 of the day, very excited to be here at Liverpool Regional as we see a typical matchup in the current meta, a Lugia V-Star versus Mew VMAX. Both decks that have had their recent success. Mew was the best deck in format for a few formats, and it's stayed there. It has evolved a lot. And as you can see with this list, there is a double turbo energy in the prizes, but that's not the form of the list here. We have the fusion energy, we have the Meloetta build here for Ryan.
Indeed, there is also a Radiant Charizard in the prizes, which is a really good card in the Mew matchup. Eating 250 damage makes a lot of difference. Once again, the attack of Radiant Charizard is discounted. Normally it would cost 5 energies, but for every prize that the opponent has taken, it will cost 1 less.
So what do you think the plan here for the Lugia V-Star deck to beat Mew is?
So once again, the first one will look pretty standard. Try to get those Archeops in the discard pile, try to set them up with Lugia V-Star, and afterwards you will need to go through one of your big attackers. Once again, Mew VMAX staying at a towering 310 HP. Something that the Lugia deck is actually not too well prepared to deal with in one hit. The only things we're able to do it for sure will be a Yveltal with its amazing destruction attack. But at the same time, Lugia is a deck that trades one prize for the other. So the Mew player, right now, their plan will be to play carefully, be very mindful of when to leave a Mew VMAX on the field or when to make it escape into the deck.
Well, the interesting thing you've got in this matchup in particular is Lugia V-Star will be looking to maybe get a knockout on Mew VMAX with a 4 powerful colorless and choice belt. That'll put it at 330. Typically, you'll see stuff like the Oricorio lowering the damage by 20. So the Mew VMAX will be in range then. But we can see in Ryan's list here, he plays a V-Guard energy. So it does make that back and forth of trying to hit that big number with a Lugia V-Star onto a Mew VMAX quite interesting, because they've both got ways to deal with it.
Yeah, I'll take a moment to discuss the deck list. Something very interesting for the Mew player. So first of all, this is going to be the Fusion Strike version, the one of the bit more aggressive versions. We'll try to get the Lizard Sparkle as soon as possible and try to dish out a lot of damage with that Meloetta Melidius Echo attack. But at the same time, it runs 3 Pokemon catchers. Something we haven't seen. A card that when it came out, it would just gust up one of your opponent's Pokemon into the active, but now you gotta flip a coin. So I think a very aggressive version. I think it really takes into the spirit of the deck, running as well one Judge to really use the best of the Genesect Engine advantage. Therefore, yeah, this is a very aggressive version of Mew. I really like it. I think this is how the deck should be played.
Okay, so we've got a Battle VIP pass, and there is an escape rope there too. So this could get the Lugia into the active and really start this match off in favor of Ryan. The Meloetta, a great way to start things off. So I should imagine a Meloetta is going to come down and try and high roll the Fusion Energy into play with the Lizard Sparkle and an attachment. If that was the case, the Lugia gets knocked out. That's almost a guaranteed win for Ryan.
Indeed. As long as Ryan is able to, there's a Sparkle getting 2 energies from his deck. He has none in the prizes, which is really good for him. Meloetta Echo will do 70 damage for each Fusion Strike energy attached to one of your Pokemon. To any of your Pokemon, I should say. So Lizard Sparkle plus 1 attachment from hand plus a boost from the Power Tablet will grant a knockout on the Lugia. And there we go. Putting the Mew, because the Mew has free retreat, so he can just set up for now.
Oh, this is brilliant.
Oh, great. This is fantastic start here for a Seal Stone. For those of you who are unaware, has the ability Star Alchemy. You can attach it to any of your V Pokemon and basically
the Alyssa Sparkle.
Oh my.
Oh
my.
I mean, there's a world where maybe the Alyssa Sparkle after drawing would have been better, but at this point, guaranteeing those 2 energy into play, knowing that there are other energies that could be attached, is a good approach. But if you Alyssa Sparkle first, it takes the outs out of the deck, so you're not necessarily going to draw into the one you need to attach. But we haven't seen what the rest of the hand is. Maybe the other Fusion Energy is just in the hand already.
Yeah, it could also be free Power Tablet that will get the job done. 90 damage plus 140. That's 230, which is enough to knock out the 220 HP Lugia V. So now he has 1 Genesect activation. There's a choice belt. Oh my, there's a choice belt as well.
So there we go. That's the turn 1 knockout on the Lugia is guaranteed. And the Lost City down. It doesn't matter because that's going to be discarded, I believe.
And I think Raz had enough. Raz had enough.
That's unbelievable. And that exactly right there is why the Meloetta build is favoured by some players. You know, our good friend Shay, who sits here and commentates, we don't get to speak to him. We switch over. We never actually talk. We just we're separated for a very good reason. But Shay is the Meloetta favoured Mew VMAX player, and that is exactly why right there.
Yeah, we should take a moment to discuss Mew VMAX right now is being built in 2 main ways. That's the double turbo energy, which is a bit more consistent, less explosive, but still packing all that Mew power, still running the Fusion Energy for the big knockout with Meloetta. Well, instead the Fusion Strike version tries to be very quick, tries to get aggressive right away. And look at this, it paid off knocking out that Lugia really meant that there was no comeback potential right there.
Well, the challenge you've got in the Pokemon trading card game is going first can often put you in such a favored position, especially with all these decks that need to evolve. You know,
Exactly.
VMAXs, V-Stars, all need to evolve. So if you're going second, you really need to find a way to punish people.
Indeed.
And you've got the Lost box, which has the Cramorant high roll. You could say high roll. It happens pretty consistently.
It happens pretty consistently.
And then on the Mew VMAX, we had the Meloetta there. And you can see how much it favors some of those going turn matchups, going two-turn matchups. It's not always going to work. It happens sometimes, but that sometimes is enough to swing best of threes in your favor.
Mew VMAX, sometimes you set up, you go into turn 2, and your hand is like full of cards that you cannot discard. Therefore, you cannot use the Genesect ability to draw as many cards as you would like to. Mew is a deck in this format that takes a particular spot, which is if you go against Mew and your deck is not fast enough, you will lose. Unfortunately, Mew really punishes slow builds. It also punishes decks that try to do some very complex plan, but at the same time, sometimes gets walled by Duraludon, sometimes gets walled by control decks. But
there's also Drapion V.
Yeah, Drapion V. We saw a lot of Lugia this today playing the Drapion V. We haven't featured much of the Mew yesterday. We featured just one match. This is the second match we're featuring overall. But I'm betting that we will see at least 1 or 2 Mew into the top 8.
Oh, 100%. Mew has always been there or thereabouts. And I think when Mew is expected to be at an event, it's a bad pick because Drapion V is so good against it. People are ready for it and they try and slot in a Drapion V where they can. It's a one-off card that just puts the matchup in your favor. The moment that Mew's forgotten about and starts to be this deck that people don't respect, it then finds its way through. And that's the case for a lot of decks in the meta right now. Same thing is true for Reggie's. When Reggie's not respected, it gets a chance to bump through the meta. But I think at this event, I've not seen as many Drapion V as we saw maybe at Warsaw or Stuttgart.
Exactly.
And it means that Mew is finding its way through and sneaking in some wins.
Exactly. We're going right to the... Oh, wow, that looks like the start on the first game. Except this time, there's a Lugia directly onto the active. Let's see what Raz wants to do. Maybe he wants to... If he sets up another Lugia this time, this will be better for him. But I don't think he has a way to do it in his hand. Therefore, he will just go for an Evolution Instance, thin out his deck, and probably find that Archeops to try to discard next turn.
Imagine how Raz must feel after that first game. I mean, there's not a huge amount you could do there other than getting more of a setup first turn. Because even then, if you put 2 Lugia V down to guarantee the Lugia V star next turn, it's not always the most favored option because you have to get rid of the threat of the Meloetta, and that's only a 1-prize Pokemon you're taking then. I mean, it's still possible, but to get a 2-prize knockout on the first turn of the game, it is fantastic for that Mew VMAX list.
Exactly. It can get really rough for the opponent. So now Raz just like when I look through his deck, let's see what he has in his prizes. 2 Evolution Instance. Something that definitely helps you set up, but not too crucial. 1 Aurora Energy. On the other side, instead, we see a Genesect. No problem there because he plays 4 and just 2 Quick Balls. So both players have some amount of setup in their prizes, but I think they will both be fine as long as we get a turn 2.
Yeah, we'll see. Because that first game, I mean, the idea of getting a Lugia out will be pretty important here for Raz to make sure that the same thing that happened last game doesn't happen. Starting Stoutland was not the ideal start. We've mentioned a few times with Lugia V-Star, the different starts are not ideal, and having an attacker that you don't want to use in a matchup go into your active spot is always a problem. But having 2 Lugia Vs out here, 1 Archeops discarded. So a pretty solid start here.
Yeah, I did not recognize that Ultra Ball art. He discards, however, a Lugia V-Star copy. He does play 3. He runs a free cut of Lugia V-Star as well. He runs the Chulu minion line, which is really good against control or certain matchups that need to go slower. But overall, I think Raz is starting A-OK. He has a little minion for turn 2, or maybe he's going to think to get it into the bench now, just in case an escape rope goes into effect. Yeah, it's just going to look for something. After all, Mew lists do run some piece of hand disruption, but it's going to be 1 or 2 copies either of Mani or Judge.
Yeah, on this occasion, it is just the 1 copy of Judge for Ryan. This is where you said about the favouring of the builds. The Meloetta build looks to play aggressively and not disrupt the opponents as much, where the double turbo energy build will often play things like paths in it now.
Indeed.
Ways to disrupt, and typical one of those is Mani's or Judge's. Judge's now, because of the Oranguru being everywhere, especially in Lugia V-Star, Judge is a much better way to disrupt your opponent when they put something on top of their deck with Oranguru. Otherwise, Mani is just straight up better because you don't draw back into your cards and you get more cards out of it.
Exactly. So yesterday we were talking about techs and how important they can be in this matchup. I'm going to take quickly look at the Mew VMAX techs that are being run. There's one big Parasol, two Lot City, and the Lost Vacuum. These are all very interesting choices. Big Parasol obviously great against all sort of attack effects. So Yveltal, I'm thinking Sableye, but at the same time Lost City is great against all those decks that require all these Pokemon to be looped throughout.
Speaking of great cards, another Battle VIP pass to kick things off for Ryan.
That is a good card.
Mew VMAX loves seeing this card on the first turn. You want to get your bench as wide as possible to increase the effect of Genesec's ability, Fusion Strike system. And so we're going to be seeing that first deck check here. We'll recognize that pretty much everything that's needed is in the deck. Maybe a count or two of some cards that like to see a bit more.
Fusion Strike energies right now. That's the most crucial cards in his deck. For people that do not remember, Fusion Strike energy has a lot of line attacks. It also means that you will all the effects of your opponent's Pokemon abilities will be prevented by that energy.
Yeah, so it can be quite good in decks with ping damage like Zigzagoon or the Rapid Strike Inteleon.
Indeed.
So
quick shooting will not work, which is a damage modifier that is very needed when your Mew VMAX has 310 HP. Obviously,
I did play against the Mew VMAX meta with Salazzle Butterfree, and it was always very sad whenever you tried to get the...
it does not really work now, does it?
No.
Ooh, very interesting this card there. The Boss Order, the only copy that is being run by Ryan. However, we should remind that there are 3 copies of Pokemon Catcher and one Serena being run into the deck, so he's not really fussed about this kind of boss order. What's more is that he also ran 1 copy of Silene. So Silene, you flip 2 coins and put a number of cards equal to the number of heads on the top of your deck. And you may say, well, he's not going to draw it that turn, and that's where you're wrong, because Fusion Strike system is going to make you draw that card right away. So you can go Silene, it's a supported card, but then you can get a Pokemon Catcher and try your luck.
Yeah, it's seen some pretty crazy turns with Mew VMAX with the Silene, just putting it on top of the deck, like especially power tablets. The kind of how far you can reach with a power tablet because you can play it and then put it straight back on top with the Silene. But you can see there a fully wide bench there.
And we're going to see some cards this turn, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, actually, that's a... Well, he did draw the Elisa Sparkle, but there are some cards that you cannot really get rid of.
Oh,
actually,
there we go.
There's a Crown Mobot. Let's see what he wants to go for right now.
And this is where the synergy of the Battle VIP pass works so well in this deck, because once that card is used in the first turn, or it cannot be used in the first turn, it's a dead card in your deck, but can be used as an easy discard for the Chromatic. And we do see a heads there for the Chromatic. The dice did roll off camera for you guys, but judging by the deck search
but then
now,
picking up the card. Otherwise, your opponent would be like, what are you doing, sir?
Hang on, what's going on here?
Well, he just used 1 Fusion Strike system. He has access to 2 more. He has access to the Forest Seal Stone that is already attached to that Genesect V in the bench. Like, Mew has so many tutors effect. He can get any card into from his deck.
So I'm assuming, I saw Alyssa Sparkle in the hand. I assume this will be a Fusion Strike Energy. Attach that to the Meloetta, then use the Alyssa Sparkle from hand. That was probably just one final check there through the deck to make sure all of the Fusion Energy were available, and then we'll see that Meloetta turn 1 attack again. Indeed.
The Meloetta turn 1 attack is great. However, that will mean that if the Meloetta, Raz is able to set up his Lugia and his Archeops engine, the Meloetta may be discarded, therefore losing those energies later on.
Of course, the Genesect being in the active spot there needs to be moved out the way, so getting that off of the Chromatic, playing a safer approach here, because getting the Meloetta would have been a bit of a high roll there, because you'd have had to start drawing into the switch outs, but guaranteeing the switch here, and then looking to get the Luminion attacked here.
I don't mind this. Obviously, Lugias, once they're there, they stick there. Luminion instead can have free energies attached to it and run it back into the deck. And obviously that means 2 less prizes for Ryan to take very easily. So if he's able to get the knockout this turn, I think he already has a Fusion Strike, a true Fusion Strike energy in his hand. That won't be any problem. That means there are 2 left in the deck. I think he's going for it. Yep, there's going to be a Laser Sparkle. Also, something to be mindful about is that Oricorio's ability will block 20 damage, lessening Zeal from all its Fusion Strike Pokemons.
What's interesting here as well is with the Fusion Strike energy in play, if they remain all 3 of them in play, that will then mean that next turn there's access to 280 damage from that Melodious Echo.
Indeed.
So by attaching the 2 from Alyssa Sparkle, 1 from hand, the 1 remains in hand. Next turn, if they're not removed from play, big numbers available, and 280 is a huge number into Lugia V-Star. It will save on those power tablets, so it would mean potential future turn they'll be able to use power tablets to reach those high numbers instead.
Exactly.
So Ryan in a very strong position here.
And Mew always has access to the Technoblast attack, 210 damage, just Genesect V attack, and during your next turn that Pokemon can attack, that's no problem because Mew has no retreat cost, so you can just pivot into another Mew or another of your attackers. Obviously, this is the interesting approach of Mew when you go at the beginning, Fusion Strike energy, get a knockout, and the Fusion Strike may go away if the Pokemon gets knocked out. But that's no problem, that's no issue, because you always have access to, as you mentioned, Power Tablet and the base 210 damage, which is a lot.
Yeah, so what we'll see here is the Meloetta attacking, getting the knockout on the Minion, 2 prizes. This is forcing Raz to have to think about that 2-2-2 line that Mew's going to go for, and it can just ignore things like Yveltal. Because the Lugia in the active spot, if that gets taken out, then 1 Gust required to get the last Lugia.
Something very interesting here. At the first turn, Raz played an Evolution Instance, and he played a Ultra Ball. He has 2 Evolution Instance in the prizes, as well as an Ultra Ball. This means that his chances of getting an Arceus in the discard this turn, I don't know what he has in his hand. I saw Professor Research, but I don't know what else is in there. His chances of getting these Pokemons, the Arceus, in the discard may be slim, so he needs to be, I think, somewhat lucky here. I think there's another Luminion coming down. He's just thinking about what he wants to get.
Well, the thing with putting down Luminion is it is a 2-prize Pokemon that can be taken out, but at this point that's nothing too much to worry about. And an interesting include in the Lugia V-Star deck you just found there.
Yeah, I was just looking at his list and I saw a copy of Irida. I guess he really wants access to the Manaphy or the Luminion. Once again, Irida can only get a water Pokemon, but it will also get you an item card. Therefore, as you mentioned, this is a metagame full of techs, and getting the Canceling Cologne, the Lost Vacuum, or the Choice Belt, which runs 1 copy off, makes it much, much better.
I guess that's kind of like the approach with the Skylar, right? It's just the Skylar plus getting a Luminion.
Exactly.
So that's an interesting idea, because I guess you don't always have to get the water Pokemon.
Indeed.
It's just a chance to get it out. So
exactly.
Actually, I quite like that. The only disadvantage of that is you then can't get access to a boss. Yeah. You mentioned before we spoke about Skylar. Skylar can get you the boss for next turn if you wanted it.
I was thinking towards version that he runs a version of Skylar. There's obviously the ups and downs. Irida can only get an item, while instead Skylar can get any training
I guess
card.
it can get a boss though, because he can get a Luminion. So you can get a Luminion for the boss.
Yes, that's fair. That's also fair.
I feel like
you do put a 2 prizes in the bench, which can be dangerous, but at the same time, you have that route, which is always an option. It's always important to have options.
That's an interesting idea. I hadn't even thought about Irida in terms of replacing Skylar.
Indeed.
You know, I really like this idea. When I saw it first, I was like, well, that's silly, because you're using a supporter to get a Luminion, which then gets you a supporter.
Which then gets a supporter.
But it's actually the item.
Going the long way around.
It's the item search that comes with that. So for you guys at home who've been thinking about Skylar, you've been watching Tord streams and seeing the Sky thing, and that's genius. Well, that genius has just gone to another level with Raz's Irida inclusion. But unfortunately, in this matchup, 2 games in a row, Meloetta first turn attack is not ideal. It really puts a lot of pressure on. So Ryan has had the perfect going second turns. It's now just up to Raz to try and set up as quickly as possible here and see if they can start countering that turn.
So he has the Lugia Vista. He has 1 Arceus and 1 Arceus only in the discard right now. Let's see what he wants to go for here. He could do, I think he's eyeing up Raikou. He could charge it up this turn if he has an Aurora Energy in his hand. I think that's what he's going to go for. There's Raikou. He's going to take a knockout on 2 Pokemon actually, because he was able to knock out the Oricorio in the bench. Lugia already has a double 2 above to retreat.
Gets rid of all the fusion energy as well, which takes away that scary prospect of the 4 fusion energy Melodious Echo. And you could see Ryan acknowledging that decision. You can see the nods as Ryan is appreciating.
2 Arceus. This is much better than I thought. Once again, Raz. Oh, look at those beautiful counters.
Ryan's loving this. Look at Ryan. He's fully involved in Raz's turn here. He's like, God, this is a good deck.
Big respect.
You have a good deck. You have a good deck.
Yes, yes. Always keep good manners when you're playing on Pokemon 3D card game online, please. There we go. There's going to be some attachment with the Primal Turbo, attaching to Aurora Energy from the deck, and now we're just having a search through. He does not run any Raikou-specific energies in his list. He just runs 4 Aurora Energy and 1 Heat Fire Energy.
This is what we were talking about, and we had way more of a discussion about this than we probably
Indeed.
should have. So
Indeed.
there's 4 Aurora Energy in every Lugia deck, but then a lot of people are playing variations of the special energy. We've seen Hiding Dark, Heat Fire, Wash, Speed Lightning sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes even Speed Lightning.
People are starting to favor the Heat Fire energy. Why would you go for that over any of the other energies?
So Heat Fire has 2 functions in this deck. The plus 20 HP is not particularly important. It can come into clutch sometimes. For example, you can tank one of Flying Pikachu's VMAX attack, but it's best because you can attach it on Yveltal and it functions as a fire energy. Once again, the bonus is only given if the Pokemon is fire, but it still counts as a fire energy. Or it can go into the Radiant Charizard. The other way is instead running that Hiding Darkness energy, which will only go, however, on Yveltal, because Yveltal has very specific attack, which needs Fire, Psychic, and Darkness, and 2 colors as well. So it's up for debate. It's always up for debate, as we see. Overall, statistically, the favorite card is the Heat energy, but as the game evolves, this can always change.
And so also, we see the scenario where it's also quite beneficial, which is when you're not probably going to attack with Yveltal here, because you cannot attack with both Raikou and Yveltal in the same matchup. It's not possible. There's too many energy required unless you start including more of those special energy.
And those matchups sort of don't overlap a lot of the time, like in the matchups in which you need to use both Raikou and Yveltal. But actually something interesting just happened here. The amazing shot from Raikou dealt 120 damage onto the Mew that is now being evolved into Mew VMAX rather than taking a knockout onto the Oricorio. So now Ryan is faced with a choice. Would you like to shuffle back your Mew VMAX and don't give me the free prizes Raz is asking with a Psychic Leap copying it from the Mew V? Or would you like instead to leave it there for me to take a knockout now?
Well, there is potential to get the knockout on Raikou if you get enough power tablets involved, and then you can shuffle it in.
Exactly.
And it also takes away any 3 prizes on the bench.
That's the Tails from the Cramobot.
And that's really important right now because only 1 prize was taken with that Raikou attack. So there is a requirement to get a 3 prizer and a 2 prizer now to win the game. Can't go down that 2-2-2 line. So taking out this Mew VMAX is going to be key. So if you can remove that damage here with a Psychic Leap, that could be hugely beneficial here for Ryan.
Exactly. So right now, this should be only 100 damage on the Mew VMAX due to Oricorio's ability lessening Zeal. So right now, we're just going through the motion, discarding some cards that he's not going to use. Discards the copy from Meloetta. Obviously, once your Fusion Strikes are out of the picture, it's not as good as a Pokemon.
So we mentioned the Charizard being a big attacker in that first game when it was in the prizes. So I expect to see Charizard come out later on. But what other options? Now that your Yveltal's gone and the one-hit knockout on the Mew VMAX is not a possibility.
Exactly.
Unless you go through the Lugia V-Star approach we mentioned before with loads of powerful colorless and a choice belt. There's a lot of back and forth here of trying to tank hits. As we mentioned, Ryan plays V-Guard Energy, so that could potentially take another hit as a Mew.
Indeed, indeed. Once again, we need to remember that there's a 310 HP on the Mew. Right now, 210, but there's plus 20, meaning there will be 230 damage required to knock it out. Furthermore, the Lugia V-Star has a double turbo, which reduces its damage by 20, effectively bringing the damage that needs to be done to the Mew to 250, which is, interestingly enough for Radiant Charizard to get the job done.
Ultra Balling the Alyssa Sparkle and Fusion Energy away, accepting that the Fusion route is no longer available.
Indeed.
It does mean the V-Guard could be a little bit tougher to get into play now because you'll need to be able to get a Fusion Energy onto a Pokemon as well as the V-Guard Energy. So double Turbo Energy, the most likely route of attachment.
Exactly. He runs only 2 copies of the double Turbo. Right now, we are seeing look at how thin his deck is. That's just the power of Mew. Like, he went through maybe 3 or 4 Genesect activations, for now, maybe 5 even, and that's his deck. That's his Discapile, and that's his deck. He runs, I was mentioning, only 2 copies of the double turbo for the Mew VMAX, so he needs to be very careful about when one of his Pokemon gets knocked out. There it is.
Okay. So with the double turbo energy, Psychic Leap will need how many power tablets?
So he played already 1. Psychic Leap is 70 damage. Raikou is 120, so that's going to be only 2 needed to bring it to 130 damage needed to knock out that Raikou.
With a double turbo?
Oh, there is a double turbo as well. There's going to be 3 power tablets, unfortunately. Raikou has 110. Oh, actually has 110. So only two will suffice.
2 is perfect. Just some quick maths here on the Limitless stream. We take a little bit of time to process, just like you guys do. There's probably someone in chat who's quicker than us, as there is always the case. But no, like the working out the damage here, I think we can safely say that Raikou will be gone with 2 power tablets. Very excited to see if that's possible here.
So we're now just going through the motion. I think they're going just to cut his deck. I think he's just thinking right now.
Okay, so getting the Lugia into the active, interesting decision. So we'll see if that Lugia going to the lost zone. So the Lugia has been sent to the lost zone. So that Lugia getting knocked out there, rather than going for the Psychic Leap approach, going for that, it's going to be an interesting route here now. So that's the 2 prize, 2 prize, 2 prize route.
Indeed, he's going for a bit of a shortcut in terms of the prize route. That Mew is still damaged, so now there is a possibility of him getting knocked out. He runs.
Just go for the tempo, I guess. Here.
Yeah, I guess so. I think he's trying to get. Once again, this deck is very fast. It tries to really capitalize on that speed. What is important here for the Mew VMAX is just to keep up the pressure. And once again, as I mentioned, Luminion, the knockout at the beginning, means that it will stick there. Like, Luminion may have escaped later on, and Raz was very intelligent here to do not make that Luminion go back, to not bench that Luminion before. So right now, the Lugia V-Star will just stick there.
So in that last turn, I guess the power tablet route didn't quite come to fruition. So rather than getting the Raikou knockout, going for the Serena into the Lugia, and just going for tempo here, accepting that you can take this Mew VMAX out if you really want to, go for it. I've got another Mew ready to go next turn. I'll get that double turbo energy down and then knock out this next Lugia. Because having to reach the next Lugia would need to be a many power tablets. There is a Silene in the deck to try and get more power tablets back.
And we need also probably a Pokemon catcher, because I believe the Lugia will not stick around and probably just rotate into the bench.
We saw the V-Star marker flipped over in that last turn, so no more access to the Forest Seal Stone's ability. So some of the options taken away for Ryan here.
I think. Star Alchemy.
Star Alchemy. I don't think anyone has ever announced the ability of...
No, they just flipped the V-Star mark and went, I'm going to go look for a card. I'm going to look for a card. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's interesting here. I feel like Ryan has gone for the aggressive approach, which I think is a good idea, because you're in game 2. You may as well try.
Exactly, you're ahead one of a game, and the spirit of this deck is to be aggressive.
Exactly.
Mew VMAX is one deck that capitalizes on the pressure it puts on the opponent. Once it's set up, and it will set up for sure on turn 1, except some borderline cases, but it will just swoop through the game. So right now, just going to retreat the Lugia Visa, asking, listen, I would like you to flip ahead on your Pokemon catcher. I think there's been one already been discarded early before. Boss would have been discarded, Serena been discarded. So let's see what Ryan goes for here.
Okay, so to the Lost Zone for that.
They remembered. Usually people do not remember that. They're like, I play Lost but Zone. It just works for the opponent, right? Well, no, it doesn't.
Well, so you see there's all the power tablets there. So
I think it needs to go for it. I mean, it's just how Mew works. Like, you got 3 turns of game. If there are good ones, you win the game. Otherwise, you don't. His deck is actually somewhat chunky.
There's no more Genesect, so can't get the 4th Genesect for draw. That's in the prizes.
Exactly.
So if there is a Pokemon left in the deck, it would have to be a Mew or something like that to put onto the bench. So I'm not sure if there is one of those left. I think this is just a search to make sure all of the options are available, and it will thin that deck so that with this draw to 5. Rather than 6, getting access to the cards needed.
Mew falls into an interesting problem towards the end of the game, in which you have used all of your setup cards, which usually involve discarding cards, and you're left with the cards that you haven't got
there's
into
a Mew in the hand.
game. Yeah, there's a Mew in the hands. Just getting one more card for the Fusion Strike
system. I thought there'd be a Mew in the deck at least, but it turns out I was sneaking at the back of the hand.
And one heads already. Does he get a second one? I'm not sure. We'll discover it was off screen.
Okay. Well, you've definitely got one. So
yep.
So
there's a Pokemon catcher.
Okay, it looks like it was just the one heads there for Celine.
I mean, if there's a heads here and he finds a double turbo and the Mew VMAX, there we go, he's just going for it. One activation of that Fusion Strike system. Gonna draw 5 cards. There's the catcher that he put at the top.
Got the Mew VMAX and Ultra Ball and 2 catchers. So 2 catchers here. And Ultra Ball to thin the hand. So they're gonna try and just get everything possible here.
No more targets in the deck, but that doesn't matter.
Needs the double turbo energy. That's the last piece to this puzzle.
Indeed.
So Mew VMAX, Gust, and double turbo energy is what's needed.
And this is really one of the most exciting things about the Pokemon trading card game, in which you reach these turns in which you really need that card. You got all the cards to do it, but you need to draw it. And Mew is very well known.
So it's two power tablets been used so far, which would put it
Heads.
just out of range, right? So we got the first bit. The Gust is down.
So something interesting. I think I would have preferred if one of the first catcher would have gone tails and the second one would have gone heads, because in that way you would have wasted one more card. So, but he has two Cramorbots in hand right now, so he can fin his deck no problem. Additionally, he has the Lost Vacuum. I'm gonna look it up at the wording on Lost Vacuum if it's only opponents.
No, it can be anything.
No,
any
Stadium,
Pokemon,
so
it could
you
be
can
his
use
star
exactly. You can use one of his tools.
Seal Stones. Just sitting here trying to find access.
Great. Like, double tails on the Cramobot. Raz is really happy about that.
Is brilliant.
But look at that. You can just finish the.
Just get rid of the Forest Seal Stone. Doesn't need that.
Bye-bye Forest Seal Stone.
So there's a full draw of 6 here. So double turbo energy and I think one more damage modifier needed.
4, 5. There it is.
And
that's
a
a
choice
double
belt
turbo
as well.
Indeed. He has it all. Technoblast, 210 damage plus 90. Okay.
The handshake.
a little confusion there. 300 damage taking the knockout on the Lugia V-Star with 280 HP. Overall, this really was a showcase of Mew VMAX ability to take over the game so quickly.
Amazing. And you saw that last turn was played beautifully. The thinning, you can see the power of the catchers. You know, it is a coin flip, but you've got so much access to it over and over again in the turn. And you can also then access the boss or the Serena. So you've got guaranteed Gust as well as that sort of high rolly Gust. So this deck has a bit of a high roll element to it. There is some coin flips. There is some drawing into the cards you need at the right time. But you saw how much power that draw gives you access to many options. And Ryan's deck coming through on top, going second in both games, but still managing to get the win.
So Cramobot plus Pokemon Catcher, that's going to be 7 cards that flip a coin. But that's no bother, because both of these cards, you can just use them. As long as Mew has these cards, which you can just use whenever you can to fill out his deck, to fill out his hand, and keep going with the Fusion Strike system, you always have access to card, and you will eventually draw into your answers.
Yeah, I always wondered whether things like Crushing Hammer would just get chucked into Mew, because it's a card that thins, but if it works, it's very powerful. Unfortunately, right now, Crushing Hammers aren't as useful as they once were.
No.
But maybe we'll see that next rotation once energies become a bit more important. But anyway, that's the future right now. Mew VMAX is aggressive at this point. It's not disruptive in this particular build. It is pure aggression. And you saw there just announcing 3 attacks in a row onto 2 prize Pokemon, Luminion, Lugia V, and then Lugia V-Star. All of them accessible to the damage modifiers.
Exactly.
And Mew VMAX takes the victory.
Mew VMAX really punishes, and not even mistakes, just like sometimes your deck does not give you the card you need. Sometimes you need to put down a Luminion to find the supporter. And Mew VMAX really capitalizes on it. Every time you put a Pokemon into the bench, that is a prey for the Mew VMAX deck.
And we saw the Meloetta build go unfavored for a bit. It wasn't as good as the double turbo.
Indeed.
The one card that brought it back in was that Forest Seal Stone. And we saw it in both games, getting the perfect card at the right moment, because you can just chuck it on a Genesect. You don't need to worry about it. And we saw both games chucked on a Genesect at that moment where one more card was needed, take that card out of the deck and getting access to it. So a perfect example of Mew VMAX there. Unfortunately for us, the Lugia V-Star, just a bit too slow on this occasion. That's just how it goes sometimes. Like Lugia V-Star is, once it's set up, is such a strong deck, and everything we saw there from Raz was the best you can do. But Mew VMAX, as we mentioned, if it goes second and gets that first turn knockout, it just is a stronger deck.
Exactly. As you mentioned, I think it's interesting to look at the history the recent history of Mew VMAX. We went from running 2 Meloetas towards the LAC. Then Lugia became very popular, and people were like, we need to go just a more consistent way, because Lugia has so many options, it can bury you in value. So they went to 0 Meloetas. Then they decided to go back towards that Fusion Strike route. At least today, we've seen them doing very well. And the introduction of Puff to the Peak, I think, was very interesting. In a deck that is entirely based on abilities, running one card that shuts them off is a very interesting approach. But instead here we've seen the old Mew VMAX that we all love to see, just drawing cards, dealing damage, and winning games.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to say Raz didn't have the ideal setup with the first game, starting Stoutland, only getting 1 Lugia V down. Unfortunately, it gets knocked out there. And in the second game, having to put 3 2 prizes in play, maybe that Luminion didn't need to go down in hindsight, but you know, 2 prizes in play is always a risk, because it just means that there's that 2-2-2 route to victory. And I mean, fair play, Mew VMAX punishes slightly off setups, right? It's when it's not quite exactly what you want.
And this was the approach that was taken in Toronto, sort of running the judge line in this turbo version. Obviously, that meant to go for a more disruptive way. That's why also the path to the peak. Going path to the peak judge will be, in any deck, always a powerful play.
May I just stop you there, Marco?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to listen to you talk forever. We've been doing this all weekend, but I want to hear from Ryan himself as we got them ready for an interview.
Right then, so we are now joined with the winner of that last round, Ryan Morehouse, playing a very good deck of one of my favourite decks, in my opinion, Fusion Mew VMAX. So, Ryan, talk to me, because the rate of Mew player base has gone now. Everyone seems to be on 4 DTE, Path, Marnie, Judge. What's made you stick around with Old Faithful Fusion?
So I've just never really liked the DTE version. I've never really got with it, because you sort of forced into, if you go second, you aren't attacking turn 1.
Yes.
So you're just having to wait. So with the Fusion one, if your opponent doesn't know, if you open a Mew, they just think you're a DTE one. You can kind of just attack turn 1 with whatever you need. So against Lost Box, against Lugia, just everything like that. It's just sometimes you can just literally win games like I did game 1, where you just go Meloetta knockout, or Mew shuffle into deck or something like that, and you get the prize advantage straight away. Yeah,
especially if most players are now playing around 4 DTE.
Yeah.
Going first, they might not prioritise 2 Lugias or 2-1 prizes even.
Exactly.
Making that Meloetta just stopping games before they even start.
Yeah.
But there's also some other spice in your list, Ryan.
Yeah, there's other bits and bats.
I got to sit down, I was thinking, oh my goodness, what am I looking at here? So, we have seen catchers in Fusion Mew before, you know, sort of the world's-esque format. We want to try and get Palkias turn 1. What's made you sort of bring them back?
So again, it was sort of Lugia, because if Lugia goes first, if Lugia manages to go first and get multiple Lugias down, or if they manage to retreat and have a Dunsparce or something active, then the price trade goes a bit awkward, because you're going to have to take 1, then you have to do etc, etc. And if Lugia gets the head up, their deck is much stronger than mine at that point, because they're just able to chuck energies everywhere. So the idea with catchers is you just want to have the best shot at killing a Lugia straight away, because the deck is sort of built to go Meloetta and knock something out. And it's just sort of that as well. It's being able to use the supporter at the same time as being able to boss something up, essentially. So if you can get that catcher effect straight away, and then be able to Silene, to be able to Meloetta, to be able to Elisa, something along those lines, it's just a lot better. But the risk is you're playing Pokemon catchers.
Yeah, the risk is you're flipping tails.
But
it feels so good when you can Elisa and boss in the same turn, though, right?
Exactly.
Especially if you can get like the 4 energies in play, and all of a sudden things are getting silly. Talk to us about that Silene, because I feel as if the Fusion Mew doesn't have too many flex spots. I think Silene could be a lot of people's 61st, maybe 62nd card. What made you want to put it in, or at least keep it?
At least keep it. So I play 3-2 Mew, so 3 Mew and 2 Mew VMAX.
Okay.
So the idea of, you get rid of a Mew VMAX, you've only got 1 left. You still have that buffer where if it all goes wrong, your Mew VMAX is knocked out, you've nothing left. Then you can put that back in with Silene. It's just being able to, in Mirror, you can get back like a power tablet, you can get back basically some sort of damage modifier to boost the damage. So it's just being able to have that extra bit. Because even though it's 2 coin flips, there's a good chance you're going to get one of them.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance you're going to get 1 card back that's actually really useful. And it's also for fusion energy, because sometimes you have to get rid of fusion energy. Free fusion energy is still really good, because you can use Meloetta for 210. So if you can get 1 back sometimes, it just works out really well. And then the other thing is, for against Lost Box and things like that, having multiple judges is really good, but I just don't have the space. So being able to, go Judge, Silene later on, Judge again after that, it sort of disrupts the hand a lot.
Yeah, so you sort of have a bit of halfway house there, with a little bit of hand disruption, mostly seen in the 4D Mew build. Okay, I like it. One other card I want to delve into a little bit, because it's a card I was testing a bit myself.
Yeah.
I didn't quite find it as useful, but I'm glad to see you using it. That means I was on the right lines a little bit here. That V-Guard energy, talk to us about that. Yeah.
So V-Guard's one of those sort of iffy ones. I haven't really used it much, to be honest, but I saw someone playing it a couple of months ago in one of the regionals. Thought, yeah, that makes sense, because the mass is, if you have an actual game against Lugia and you manage to get it on, it means that they can't knock a Mew out without having to get they just can't do it. So it gives you that extra time. So that was the sort of idea of it, and because you're playing fusion energy, half the time you can put an energy onto Mew. You can put a fusion into Mew instead of Oricora or something else. So you've already got that energy on. It means you have an extra 20 damage if it comes up in use. There's just sort of bits and bats like that, and it's just being able to take less damage from things. It sometimes comes up just on any Pokemon.
Yeah.
To be able to, you know, block damage from something specific.
Yeah, 30 modifier is massive,
big,
especially
big.
consider Oricora. You're already starting at
Yeah.
310, so I never even considered that. Yeah, it pushes you outside of Lugia range completely, right?
Yeah, entirely out of it.
Because if you have Oricorio, they need 4 powerfuls on the belt. V-Guard just says, let me just
push it back a bit.
Yeah, let me just push that back a bit. Loves it. Did you ever have any other considerations for this event, or was you always on the
I'm
Mew
always
train?
Mew. I think last Liverpool regionals I was playing Suicune, and then after that I just went into Mew, and I haven't played anything else.
Oh really? So you've been on Mew ever since?
Ever since. I always thought it seemed to get weaker slowly, and then they gave it like the Forest Seal to get back up a bit. So now it's like somewhere in the middle where there are a lot of powerful decks, but because it still has that burst power, that sort of ability, and then it's just consistent. It can always do really consistent things.
Yeah, that's the thing. That you got like decks like you alluded to, Lugia. I think when Lugia sets up, the power level's probably slightly higher, but it's got that initial hurdle of, you know, needing double Archeops, and then you need to find V-Star. If you don't do that, you're not really doing a lot. Where at least with Mew, you always tend to at least be rolling with some kind of attack turn 2.
Sort of thing.
Yeah, even turn 1 if you're playing fusion builds. So all things go well. Talk to us about your goals for the event now. So obviously you're in day 2. Already got a sneaky win already. Where can we expect to see Ryan Morehouse at the end of the day?
Oh, that'd be an interesting one. I'm not sure. I'm happy to have got a win, and I came in at 7-2, so I'm quite looking good for being at least top 64. Any points is good, just sort of keep pushing on. My last couple of runs I've sort of been stuck in the top 64 range, so anything better than that is kind of what I'm looking for.
Okay, so aim for over top 64.
Over top 64.
And you're already, so you're 8-2 now?
8-2 now,
8-2, so okay, it's looking good.
It's not too bad.
It's looking good. You've got to take it one game at a time, and hopefully some more cheeky escape rope Meadowettas, because we want those easy ones around here. Well, thank you very much for your time, Ryan. You've been a pleasure. We're going to throw it to a break and hopefully get our next round with you as soon as possible.